Hello, and thank you for tuning in to Starting Small, a podcast about brand development, entrepreneurship, and innovation in the modern world. In this episode, I'm joined by CEO of Lippert Components, Jason Lippert. What's neat about Lippert Components is it's handed through 3 generations, starting with his grandfather Larry, then to his father Doug, and then Jason took over in 2003. LCI is the nation's leading supplier of components to the recreational vehicle industry, surpassing 11,000 team members and $2.5 billion in revenue. Hello, and thank you for tuning in to Starting Small. Today I'm joined by Jason Lippert of Lippert Components. Jason, thank you so much for joining me today.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
So I want to start out with the origin story starting in 1956 of Lippert Components. If you could share some insight on your grandfather, on the inspiration behind founding Lippert Components, along with working with components in general.
Sure. So, I can't tell you all the things that were in his mind.
Yeah.
He came back from World War II. He served in the Navy. Didn't grow up with much. Grew up with several other siblings and a real small home in Elma, Michigan, which is right in the center of the state, just north of Lansing. And he came home from the war and had to find a job like everybody else. And he found a manufactured housing company called Redmond Homes, who turned out to be one of the bigger housing manufacturers in the manufactured housing world, and got a job on the roof line, got promoted to supervisor of the roof line at one point in time. And as he started to network around that business, he got to know one of the Redmond brothers. And because he worked around roofing, he felt he could, get out, and he's a pretty bold guy. He's still alive today and still owns a business today, and kind of sits behind the scenes and gives a lot of direction. But he decided with this Redmond family member that he could start his own business, and he actually, got him to loan him some money, and they started out building a manufactured home. So he thought he could just build a home and get into that business. But after their first one, as you can imagine, thousands of components, and he just had a little garage they were working out of trying to build it. And he ultimately, the long and short is he ultimately said, I worked in a department and ran a department that put on roofs. I understand the roofing product really well. At the time they were just metal corrugated roofs that they'd roll onto the unit. So he said, hey, look, I've seen the process. I could do that. So they bought some equipment and started building roofs in 1956.
Wow, that's amazing. So moving on from there into your life, what was your childhood like? So were you raised in the Midwest?
Yeah. So, my grandpa founded the business in Elma, Michigan. Had 2 sons, and, they stayed in Elma, Michigan. Mm-hmm. So they were a little small rural town, maybe 10,000 total people. But, the business eventually all moved away from there. So all that was left there when I grew up was, the corporate office. Mm-hmm. My dad had taken over in 1979. And at that point in time, it was a $5 million business. Wow. And then when my dad took over, I was born in 72, so between 79 and 94, when I graduated from college, the business grew to about, just under 100 million.
Okay. During this time when you were a child, did you ever do anything around the business as a kid, such as helping out?
No, you know what? It was just a corporate office, and I really didn't until I was in college and did some internships at some of the facilities, some of the factories that were outside of Michigan. I had never been to a facility. I didn't know really what he did. As a kid, you tend to be a little bit more self-centered and not, you're not thinking about what your parents are doing all the time. So we ultimately kind of learned while we were in college what the business was and what it did. So I didn't really do. My dad had a gym there at the corporate office, so we'd go over there and shoot hoops and play basketball all the time. But
nice. So outside of Lippert, as a child, did you have an entrepreneurship mindset at all? Did you ever sell anything or try to start your own companies, maybe say through your teen years?
I didn't. I did some lemonade stands and sold golf balls on the golf course and things like that. So that was about as entrepreneurial as I got. If that answers
Yeah,
the question.
for sure. So out of high school, what made you decide to go to college, even with the family business practically waiting for you? Was it expected of from your family?
Yeah, so I was the first Lippert in our family lineage that had gone to college and graduated. So it was a big deal. And my parents, there was no other option. It was something that they wanted all of
Yeah.
me and my brothers and sister to do. So um, uh, initially decided to go to Miami University in Ohio to swim, and it was just far enough away, but not too far away in Oxford, Ohio. So uh, I did my 4 years of undergrad there.
Awesome. So what did you study there?
I studied accounting and information management systems.
Okay. Did you ever think about other career paths, say outside of Lippert, even with this opportunity in front of you, say during college or after college? Did you ever think about any other career paths or no?
I really, going into college, I didn't know what I was going to do. I didn't even know really what my family's company did. So I wasn't even thinking about our company as an option. Uh,
Yeah.
Knowing that eventually I'd sniff around it and see what was there. But it wasn't until, my sophomore year where I did my first real internship traveling, with some of my dad's VPs around the country to see some of the facilities, meet some of the people, see what our business actually did.
Hmm.
And it was at that point in time that I started to, get some interest. Okay. Then it was, my junior year summer, going to the factory and working a second shift in welding, and really getting a deep appreciation and understanding of the products we build and the people that are around the business. And it was at that point in time where I didn't even really consider anything else. I was going to get through my senior year and graduate and go start wherever my dad wanted me to start out at.
That's awesome. So you graduated in 1994 and you went straight to Lippert. So what were some of your first roles out of college then? Were you up kind of in hierarchy getting your degree, or where were you at in this era?
Nope. I left out my junior year. Like I said, I was,
Oh, that's right.
no, junior year, I welded and did just a
Okay.
shift, welding operation for building chassis for Park Model, and manufactured homes. And then as
Hmm.
soon as I graduated the following year, I kind of went right back, into that and did about 8 to 10 months back in welding.
Hmm.
So I welded for 8 to 10 months on the line, helped run a line there in manufacturing, and then I eventually got promoted to sit like an assistant plant manager type position at that facility in Goshen, Indiana.
Awesome. So moving on to 2000, I read a little bit about LCI became an international company. What was that process like for Lippert Components?
So I wasn't too involved with the sale to the public company. My dad
Okay.
in '97 just made the decision. I was starting to get into some other areas and have interest to grow the business in some other areas. And I think he wanted to retire in his 50s, and he was just about that age. So he felt it was a good move for the family to find a suitor for the company that could help with succession planning and help grow the company. I wanted to do a bunch of things, and that was going to require some capital. And as a small, relatively small family business, he didn't want to, necessarily jeopardize and take all the financial risk by, we were going to need to build facilities and add a lot of equipment and things like that. So he was ready to sell the business. And we did do that with a kind of a holding company out of New York that was on the American Stock Exchange. And he retired not too long after that, not too long after 2000. And the public company thankfully let me build a team and grow the business in the direction, I felt it should go, with getting into some new areas outside of the manufactured housing world.
For sure. So in 2003, this is when your father stepped down and you became CEO. Did you feel added pressure having all of this responsibility added to you? Did you feel that you were prepared to step up to this position?
the best thing my dad did for me, and I can never thank him enough for it, was just, starting me at the ground floor. So I had a deep appreciation for the products and understanding of the products and how to build them, especially around the welding function and the fabricating function.
Yeah.
And then, I met a lot of people on the ground floor, and ultimately, they probably had a different level of respect for me, having gone through all that. I started up a couple facilities by the time I became, president and CEO. So
For sure.
I think I had the support of a lot of the people that were in the business, 800 to 1,000 people at the time. Would have been a lot harder to do just coming in out of college and saying, hey, look, I got my, undergrad in business or my MBA or whatever, and, start out in, the upper ranks someplace. I think my story would have turned out a lot differently. The company story would have turned out a lot differently.
For sure. So acquiring this type of position, how do you obtain relations with such a high number of employees?
So, again, I go back to how my dad started me, and, I appreciated right out of the chute how important everybody's position was. And just tried to grow into a servant leader role and, get to know as many people as I could in the business. And again, starting the RV business out from the ground floor, a lot of those team members are still working for us today. I've brought a lot of those people around the companies. I've hired people that are still around the business. So, it was easy to stay connected, with such a large number of people, just because I'm comfortable, in the facilities. I'm comfortable around the product. I'm comfortable around the customers, and I've never left those realms. I've always kind of stayed connected, whether it's to our customers or team members on the front lines. Today, I still do, frontline leader meetings where we'll pull 50, 60 people off the front lines of our business, the men and women that are actually leading teams that build the products on the front lines, those first level of supervisors. And I'll meet with a team of 40 to 60 of those people weekly and just listen to their experiences and figure out, what we can do better. And I try to stay connected in as many ways as I can, because I think it's a competitive advantage for us when the CEO is that closely connected to the people and the products and the business versus, trying to sit at a high level and only focus on strategic type, functions.
For sure. So something I really respect about your company is that I really notice your community engagement, your employee engagement, your relationships in general are just like very powerful. Is there something that you can tell your employees when they first come in, maybe a motto or something that your company stands by? So what is that to be expected by, say, like a new employee coming into Lippert Components?
Yeah, so it's really different today compared to, when I first started out. So today I'd say really quickly that, if everybody has to live up to our core values. So our core values are passion to win, caring about others, positive attitude, honesty, integrity, and team play with trust. So we say, hey, look, if you're going to be a team member with us, it's not good enough just to come to work every day and work hard. You've got to align with those values. And if you can't align with those values, then, you probably can't be here long term. And if you're a leader, you've got to abide by a whole nother set of values. And that's, you got to be a motivator. You've got to be an effective communicator. You've got to be courageous. You've got to be a servant leader. And you got to be humble and coachable. So, so we've got values for people to line up to. They're not hard to remember. We put them on cards so that if, you never have to, it's never too far from your mind. And then we coined our culture journey, that will go on forever. I mean, you can always improve your culture. We coined that Everyone Matters, and we did that in 2016. So we have a few sticky things that, we try to say, hey, look, we're different from other companies because we don't just put the stuff on the walls. We mean it. We live it. You're going to be evaluated by it. And as long as you do these things and try to, you go on kind of a personal development journey while you're here, and we'll help you do that. You can stay as long as you want.
So bouncing off from that, exactly what you said, differentiating from other companies, something I've noticed is your community service. So you guys launched an 100,000 hour community service objective. What inspired you to start this initiative?
So kind of went hand in hand with our values. And, one of our core values, as I said, was caring about others. And our mission statement is making lives better by developing meaningful relationships with, our customers, our team members, and our community. So, that's where so what are we doing about the community? If we really are trying to, develop relationships and make lives better, what are we doing? So as we've continued this core values journey and this everyone matters journey around our culture, that means people in our community. And, it's really simple. We were sitting in a strategic planning meeting coming up with our top 5 short-term objectives. And we always all nominate a bunch of things that we think ought to make that short list. And in 2016, one of our executive leaders said, you know what, we always have financial related metrics and goals on here. Why don't we do something that's related to service for the community? We all serve, we all do it, but so we eventually developed, okay, well, how do we put a metric around service, and how do we encourage more team members around the company to serve? And that's just morphed into a whole nother, opportunity in and of itself. And we hired a philanthropy department with a director of philanthropy, and she has two people in her department. So, we're not just saying, hey, look, let's just try to do a good job and, serve the community. Let's have people that are responsible for, contacting the community partners that we have all over the community and setting up serving events and rallying our team members that maybe haven't served and educating them about how we can serve and all the different opportunities that exist, and set up community service days for the company. And that's how we're going to get our 100,000 hours, is tracking and, having actual activity around that.
That's awesome. So going to a little bit about the specs with Lippert, what goes into the decision process with expansions, such as making a new product?
I was just thinking about just a quick add-on to the last comment you made about our community service 100,000 hours. So the biggest aha in for us in this community service engagement and 100,000 hours of community service that we participate in every single year is that a lot of other companies around the community and around the country that have heard about it, whether they see it on social media or whether they're close to a plant that we've got in Texas or Florida and they've heard about it that way. One of the cool things has been they've reached out and said, hey, how did you guys do this? And how did you get this off the ground? And how did you get it done? So we have the roadmap laid out, and we hand that roadmap or game plan out to companies that ask about it all the time, which hopefully has a ripple effect and gets more companies doing the same kind of thing.
That's awesome. So what does that look like for an employee? Do you guys give a certain number of hours for employees to hopefully object towards that? Or how do you obtain actually reaching the goals?
Yeah, so we don't force people into serving, but we do know that there's, thousands of people in our organization that have never served before. And what we found just, through the last 4 years of doing this is that it's not that they don't want to, it's that they don't know how to engage. So what our philanthropy department does is, they have great relationships with every charity and most of the communities we work in and have businesses in, and they set up serving events. So, they go back and get these serving events to the plants and say, hey, look, why don't you do a community day? We ask them to do 4 a year each. So each of our 90 facilities has to do 4 serving events a year. And it's the plant's job to find a champion in the plant that's going to rally and get as many people, to those 4 serving events a year as possible. And usually, they'll collaborate and, work on each other and encourage each other to go. And they'll always have, a bunch of people show up, and then we'll track the hours from those 4 serving events at each of the 90 facilities. And, that's how we drum up our hours.
That's awesome. So moving on to the specs of Lippert. So what goes into the decision process with expansion such as a new product?
So, things happen pretty organically around here. We have, several different markets. So whether it's RV or marine or cargo trailers or, our aftermarket or European products, each industry have business leaders. Each market has business leaders, whether they're the ops and the salespeople. And generally together, they're making those decisions on their own. I mean, I might come up with an idea once in a while, or another executive comes up with an idea and we'll throw it on the table and do it. But most of the time it happens organically through, the sales teams bringing back, ideas from the customers, or our R&D teams having ideas of their own, or operations people having ideas of their own. And what you might be surprised to find is that most of our innovation around the company isn't always just a brand new product that solves a new problem. It's making existing products, different and better, making existing products, you might have one product and it's a really good solution to a problem, but could we do one that's a little bit less cost effective and make a good instead of a better, or a good, better, best type model where we've got maybe 3 different products in a product line. But a lot of times it's just adding bells and whistles and features to products to differentiate, products in a category. And that's one of the ways we can innovate and develop new products, and always, be throwing new solutions out to our customers.
Gotcha. So specifically during this time with COVID going on, I was very curious on how is this industry looking? Are you guys booming right now, or is it going down? You don't have to share, but I've been asking some of my guests this, just kind of like a rough outline. How has it looked for you guys?
Yeah, the rough outline is we just saw June retail, and it was the best retail month ever in the history of RV. So,
wow, awesome.
I think the latest survey was 46 million Americans are going to jump in an RV in the next 12 months. And that's, more than double what we've ever seen in the past. And that's largely because people are looking for a safe way to social distance and travel and take a vacation. AAA said that 97% of the vacations this year will be road trip related. And obviously RVs is included there. Boats are super popular too. You can take your family out and go on the lake and not be near anybody if you don't want to. But it's a good way, RVs and boats are a good way to spend family time and vacation, and
sure.
Especially in this type of environment where everybody's trying to keep their distance.
Yeah. So if you could share one piece of advice with an aspiring entrepreneur, what would that be? Something you've learned, regret, just anything?
I'd say that, you have to figure out what it is that you want in life. You have to figure out what your dream is. And then, from there, not trying to make it sound overly simple, but you just have to start taking steps,
Yeah.
I think that people in general, young people that might think about things that, that it's just, you've got to write the dream down, and you've got to decide that you're going to take steps to get toward that, to get toward that dream. And, the reason I think people don't always take steps is because there's failure involved, and it never feels good to fail. And,
Sure.
And I could tell you 100,000 failures I made starting out. But I also think that one piece of advice would be to start when you're young. I think that the older you get, especially when you get a family, it's just really hard to get out and take the kind of risk you'd be willing to take as a 20-something as opposed to when you're 40-something.
Totally. Well, Jason, thank you so much for joining me today. And to the listeners out there, make sure to check out Lippert Components at lci1.com. Hey, thank you for listening to this episode of Starting Small. If you would, leave a review on whatever platform you're listening on. Also, follow Starting Small Pod on social platforms to keep up to date on future guests.